Welcome everybody by this new HelloID release webinar. In this new webinar we're going to discuss some new features that are available since the January release. So it was released last Monday. So we got a couple of new features, of course. But first, apologies for last Wednesday, because normally the webinar was on last Wednesday, but we had some technical issues and therefore we couldn't do it. So therefore we moved it to today. So hopefully everybody did get my message and that it was moved, and also saw that there was no webinar. But next time it will be on Wednesday. So let's begin. Almost for the don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a webinar. Of course, I have to mention that. So let's go to our presentation. There are a couple new features. I don't have a voting because we have this release some smaller features. We also did a lot in security improvements, but I cannot mention that because they were a little bit still secretly, but we did a lot of improvements on performance and security, so we don't have a lot of new big features, but I think those are upcoming, and I will talk a little bit about that later on. So for the first one, let's log in as an administrator. So my account is an administrator, and if I go into service automation and self-service products, you can select, of course, multiple categories, as always. But now you can see that in the URL, the multiple categories are visible. So that means is if I go to this URL again, so I refresh my page, you will see that these categories are already filtered inside. And in the previous version, we had only one category you could send to the UI. But now we support multiple. And what scenario you can use that? Maybe if you have a external web request site or something like that, where you can say, oh, I only want to request an application or docs. You can just send the filter immediately with the URL to this site, so it will be filtered with these items. And of course, in the previous versions, we already said that you can directly go to this link on the request product, and as you can see here, the categories or the multiple categories are also supported here. So you can go directly to a request product, and if the person closes it, you only see the categories that you've sent with the URL. So that's, I think, really nice a feature. And it makes it easier to switch between HelloID and a different platform or things like that. So that is the first feature. Let me check if there are any questions. No, there are no questions, so let's continue. Okay, so for the second feature, I'm going to log off as an administrator, and I'm going to log in as Matthew Jones. And he's you can see him as a normal user in your organization that requests a product. So in this case, let's say he wants to request Adobe Photoshop. And normally if you have a request, you have an approval workflow behind it. And so a manager or something has to approve it, so it waits for approval. Now I'm going to request it. So it's requested. Now I'm going back to my admin account. So I request the Adobe Photoshop product. And I'm going back as an administrator. So now I have more control. And if I go to the admin portal, I have a way to say, okay, I will overrule the request. So a manager is I don't know, on a leave or something like that. And as an admin, I can overrule it and I can say, oh, I'll approve it. So you do that if you go to self-service and administration, you can click on here and say approve. Now you will get a comment, so it's required to fill out a comment. So this was needed to do his job, something like that. And if I approve it now, and you see it's an improving, and I go back to my request history, I can now see that this product was approved by the self-service administration page by my admin account, because I did it, and you can see my comment here. And this wasn't previously available, so you cannot see that it was approved by the self-service administration and by who. So now we have a nice record of that person, that's service desk employee or something like that, or a system administrator, approved that request because the manager couldn't do it, or I don't know, he didn't respond on time, things like that. And of course you need to put in a comment, and you will see that in the user interface, and also of course in the audit logging. So this is really helpful to see what really happens when and who did what. So it's more for audit logging purposes that is really important. Let me check if there are any questions about this. No, there aren't any questions. So let's go back. To the presentation. So now we go into provisioning. And in provisioning we have two new features, same like service automation. And the first feature we have is a smaller one. If we go to the rules, and let's say we go to a rule like this, where we have configured a rule for the department administration, and I go to conditions and open up the department, but this also works for the title, of course. But currently, when you were selecting an department, you could see the department name and the code of the department. So in this case, administration 0 or administration 1 and things like that. Or in the previous version, you didn't see it when you had selected the department. You only saw the name. But now you also see the code, which is easier for a person to check if the code is really configured, because the code is used in the comparison for the person and not the name. That's really important. So the name can change and the filter still works. So this is a small change in the visuals that helps you check if the code is still applicable besides the name. So in this case, administration and admin is the code, so you can still see the code without selecting the department. The other feature, if we close this, is that we remember the filtering on each grid. So if I click on here, you see I can filter on the state and on categories that on these categories that I selected by each rule, and I can say, okay, I want to filter only on the category department, so those rules. And now if I go into another page, so let's say I'm going to evaluations and I'm going back to rules, my filter is still applied. Even if I create a rule, I say, okay, this is a new rule, and new rule for department A, and I'm going to add the category, and I don't want to publish it, but it's still a draft. I have the filter, and you will see the new rule because it has the department, but you don't see any other rules. So you still have the filtering option enabled. And this is something we did in the whole UI. So on each grid where you have filters like the rules, but also on entitlements, I can filter on a particular system. So let's say deselect all, and I want to see only my Azure AD, and I want to only see the accounts and only see the granted. And if I go to a different tab and go back, I still have the filtering for these three options. How does it work? It is remembered by your browser so in the local storage. So that's important to know, because if you use a different browser, you don't have the filtering remember option. So then you have to set it again, and it will remember it in that browser. So it's not saved by your user account, but it's saved in the storage of your browser. So it works on every grid. Also, if you have notifications, and I go here and I have I only want to see my enabled notifications, the filter is remembered. So if I go back here again, you also see that there is a blue icon, so you can see the filtering takes place. There's something configured, and not only everything, because if you do select all, it's not a blue icon anymore. So there is filtering, and it's remembered. So that it's a lot easier to go to all the pages, use filtering, check something on another page, go back, and you still have the same filtering. I have to mention this only applies to filtering and not on search terms. So if I search something and I go to a different page and come back, the search term will be gone, but the filtering will still be enabled. So I think that's good to mention. Let me check if there are any questions. No, there aren't any questions. Okay, so those were the features, the new features in HelloID that are mentioned worthy. Of course, there are a lot of performance increasements, and we also fixed a couple of security issues. We will notify the security issues in the report for our security scan, so you can ask your office if you really want to see those. Another thing I want to mention, because I said earlier there are a couple of big features coming, and you can see that on the roadmap. So if we go to roadmap.helloid.com, you see here something new, which is called beta. So that means is that this feature will be released, but it's behind the feature flag. And this one is the system account mapping or system mapping for a target PowerShell target system. And if you want to use this in February, so you want to see this new functionality, of course you can look to the webinar and the release videos. But if you want to use it in the product, you have to request through our support department to enable the feature flag on your portal. So it's still in beta, so it could be that there are going to be changes which are breaking. But this is required to eventually create conditional notifications. You will see that in March and April, also still beta. But you can check it out before it's really released to the public. And of course, it's really nice for us if you use it and you will send us some feedback so we can adjust maybe some settings and changes before we release it to everybody. So if you're interested, please contact support, and we will enable it on your portal. And it could be a training portal, of course, or a really production portal. But please do not use this new functionality for production environments like a new target system using this system, because it could break at a point. And that's the reason why it is beta. If it's not clear, you can also read the instructions inside each of these features. So there will be why we do it like this, and of course that you have to contact support to enable that feature. I think in the future we will do this more often with provisioning and also with service automation. I think that's the whole story for this release. Let me check again if there are any questions. No, there aren't any questions. Then I would like to thank you for watching this a little shorter webinar, but I think in the next webinar we're going to have some really exciting features and that we already built in this last sprint. So that's the reason why we don't have that big of feature set currently. So if you don't want to miss the next webinar, and of course the exciting new features which are in beta, then please subscribe to YouTube and hit the bell icon. Then you will get a notification when we have a new live webinar, or we have a new video, release video, a documentation video, of course. We make a lot of videos each month to hopefully inform you correctly. And of course, if there are also any feedback on the webinar or any feedback on release videos or things like that, you can always contact me through different platforms, or email or LinkedIn or things like that, or the support department, and then it will eventually go to my box. So thank you for watching, and till the next time.